If you're making a junk journal, these 12-page ideas are going to be a welcome treat. G'day, I'm Donna, and boy, have I got some great ideas for you today. These page ideas are easy enough for you to do if you're a beginner. I've added 12 different pages for you to make. Just cut loose and let these page ideas be your inspiration and make them your own. For those of you who are just starting out, I recommend watching two helpful videos. One on creating basic covers and another on making this beautiful junk journal here. Once you've familiarized yourself with those techniques, you can incorporate these 12 easy pages into your own journal. If you're watching this, I guess you're ready to deep dive into the world of junk journaling. Consider checking out my ebook here, Junk Journal Glossary. It's sort of like a dictionary, only the words and meanings are all about junk journals. Look up the word and you'll find its meaning right next to it. I've put the link to my ebook in the description box below. And after this video, probably a few days after, up to a week, I'll show you how I've made my ideas journal. I'll show you what I've put in. I'll do a flip through it, and I'll show you how I made the journal itself. Having an ideas journal is the perfect way to get inspiration because you do forget what you made, say, a year ago. So let's get started on the first page idea. I'm going to use some of the covers that I made for the video, 10 junk journal covers for beginners. I'm going to make the first page using this cover here. And it measures 5 1/4 wide by 8.5 inches high. And you'll be able to see how I made this cover, plus other covers, which is a perfect video for you if you're a beginner. I've put the link below for you. The first page I'm going to make is made from baking paper. If you love this crinkly sound, this is the one to add to your journal. And to get my favourite colour, I've coffee dyed these sheets a nice light colour. And this is so I can see the other pages through it. I'm going to start with tearing down the side of the baking paper. Once you tearing is optional. You can cut straight lines if you prefer. So once I've torn down the side of my paper, I'm going to use my cover to size my page. I want it to be not as wide as my cover. And you'll see why once I start making my page up. So I'm going to tear the opposite side, and I've made it this width because I can always tear it down a little bit as I go along. So my back is going to be a little bit wider than my front. Now I'm just going to mark it here so I know how high I want it, and I'm just going to cut straight across the top. Now I'm going to start picking out a pretty pattern piece of paper. I want 2 pieces of paper in total. Just keep watching, you'll see what I'm going to do. So I've picked out the blue piece for one side, and I'm going to use wallpaper for the other side. You can use any pretty paper you've got. So I'm tearing my wallpaper piece to be a similar size to my blue piece. It can be identical or it can be slightly bigger or smaller. When you're doing things for junk journaling, nothing has to be perfect. When it's irregular, it looks better. Now I've got my 2 decorative pieces ready to glue onto my baking paper. When I glue this on, I'm going to have a gap here at the spine and a gap here at the edge. So I start off by gluing my 2 decorative pieces of paper together, wrong sides to wrong sides. You don't need a lot of glue, just use a little bit of glue and get those two pieces together. Now I'm going to make my pink piece be the focal piece, so it's going to face me. Now the way I'm going to glue this onto my baking paper is so that some of the wallpaper is going to protrude to the right. It's going to come out past the baking paper. And then you'll see that gap on the left hand side, near my left hand here, where it's not going to go right to the spine. It's best to do this part while your baking paper is laid in the book so you can see exactly where you want the placement. And this is going to help give it that nice crinkly sound when you turn the page. I'm going to leave the back page plain and the front page is the focal point, the focal page, so that either way when I turn the pages in this book, you're going to hear that nice crinkly sound, and the baking paper, you'll be able to see through it and see the next page. And this is a very simple page to make. Baking paper is so cool to use for pages. Page idea number 2 is using exercise books. This page would have to be hands down the easiest one of all of the pages I'm going to show you. All of the books in this pile here I picked up from the charity shop. We call them an op shop in Australia. Anywhere else you might know them as, I forget. But anyway, all of these cost me either 50 cents or $1. Every time I go to the op shop, I look through their piles to see what exercise books they got. I don't care if they're short or tall or beat up like this. I'll pick them up and I open up the staples and I pull out the pages. These ones with the columns in them are perfect. If you can't get your hands on the really old ledgers, they cost a fortune. You don't really need to get them. Just use these ones. Look how good these pages look. This one here is in a pad, so when you pull it out, you get the cool holes in the top. So don't look past using these kinds of pages in your junk journal. These pages here are from my husband's old business diary. They are perfect for junk journals. Here is that exact same pile. I took a page out of every book and I copy dyed to show you what they look like in colour. So you can either use them as white, they look good in your journal, but they look fantastic if you put a bit of colour in the water. And this is just coffee. From memory, I used about 2 heaped tablespoons of coffee in a hot water bath, and that was just a small tub. So here's the difference between the white and the coffee dyed. They both look good and you can use them both in your journal. Now I'm going to use this one here for my demo because it's small and I don't have to do much with it. I'm just going to fold one side over to make a flip out. So I'll do that on the right hand side here, and I'm matching the holes up. You don't have to, I just did because they were there. And then you just put it anywhere in your journal that you think it'll look good. You can put the blank side up or the grid side up. Whatever looks good where you want to put it in your pages. You can move them around until you find the right spot for it. Told ya, this is going to be the easiest page to make today throughout this whole video. We're going from easy to stepping it up a notch. This is page idea number 3. We're going to be doing this flip-flop page. We're going to start off with a sturdy piece of paper. This is just a normal piece of copy paper that's been coffee dyed. This is an envelope that's also been coffee dyed. And these are background papers. This one my mum has made, both of these actually. So just go through your papers and pick out some pretty papers. This is used wrapping paper that I got some Happy Mail in, and some fabric pieces. And I'm going to use a piece of this for a hinge. If you don't have any fabric, just use paper, and you'll want a little bit of glue. I'm using the Barely Art glue, but you could use a glue stick. So the first thing you need to do is get the width of your page. This is the base of your page. So I'm going to use my cover to find out how wide I want my page. So I'm going to fold my page in half. Once I've got the front and back of my page, I'm going to tear off the excess. You could tear or cut. Now I'm going to tear the opposite side of the page, so the sides of both the front and back of my page are going to match. I'm going to open up my page, and it's time to attach the envelope. It doesn't matter whether you glue it down this way or this way, but I'm going to glue it down this way, and I'm going to make sure that the right hand side here is not right inside the fold. Now carefully slip your hand under, hold the flap of the envelope down, and make sure your envelope doesn't move. Close the flap on the envelope and put a little bit of glue on that flap. Don't let your page or your envelope move. Now open that flap back up and glue it onto your page. Now this piece on the left here, we're going to turn into a flip out off the edge of the envelope. So I'm going to tear it out to be the same size as the envelope. When you do this, don't pick a thin, flimsy piece of paper. Make sure it's something that is a good weight paper. So when you turn this over, you'll see that I've placed it with a tiny little gap beside the envelope. This is where my fabric hinge comes in. It's about 2 inches wide and a tiny little bit longer than my envelope and my flip out. I'm going to use the fabric glue, and I also use a pencil just inside the line of the fabric, and this is where I'm going to place my glue. You can put it on both sides if you like, so when you put the fabric down you glue them both together. Now here's where I make sure I've got that little gap between my flip out and my envelope. When I lay my fabric down, you'll notice I'm not pushing with my fingers because I don't want the glue to come through my fabric. Now when you flip it over, you'll see that little gap between the two pieces. And now it will fold over easily. So when I close my page like this, it's not going to hit the edge. So now what we're going to do is cover these two pieces. You can leave the envelope as a pocket, but I'm going to glue my piece straight over the top and use it for a journaling spot. Right now I'm going to cover the flap of the envelope on the page side, and I'm just going to use a strip of this recycled wrapping paper. So I've just trimmed this back to fit, so it's a little bit smaller than my page, and I glue it over the flap of the envelope so you can see a little bit of the page in the background. And when you close the flip-flop, you see a little bit of that trim there. Now this is a good opportunity to use damaged paper. I just tear out a piece, fold it in half, and this is going to be a journaling spot on this piece. You can glue it down either way. I'm just putting glue on the whole back of one piece, and I'm gluing it down so it's going to turn from left to right. And I've left a gap here at the edge again. Now I'm going to add a flip up right here on the page. So I'm using a book page for this. So I cut my book page out and I've made it long enough to add a hinge at the top. So I just crease a fold line here and that acts as a hinge like this. So then I fold that fold line over and just add a bit of glue only on that narrow fold line. Then flip it over, and I'm going to glue it down a little bit lower so you can see that trim underneath. Oh, so it's coming along beautifully. I'm just going to cover this piece here. And I'm just going to use this decorative piece of paper here. I think it looks pretty good. I can always glue a quote or a poem or anything I like on top of this later on. I think it ties in nicely with it all. And then once you close that page, that's it, it's done. I've just put it in my basic journal cover, just so you can see what it looks like in a journal next to another page. This is what it would look like if you put it right at the very front of the journal. So it was the first page. So the back of it is just that plain sheet of paper. And this is what it would look like if you put it in the middle of your journal somewhere and decorated the very first page. Notice how this page goes with this page. Oh, that was a total fluke. So stick around and I'll show you how I done this little collage on the front of this page. So rather than leave this page bare here, I decided to add a little collage, but I also wanted to leave enough for journaling space. So I teared down 2 pieces of scrap paper. This paper doesn't have to be scrap. It can be any paper you like. It can be 2 or 3 layers. I'm using 2 layers and I'm gluing down my first layer. And I'm just going to staple a little piece of tea-dyed gauze and some scrap thread right over the top of my top piece of paper. So once I've stapled this in place, I like to crush it with my pliers so the staples lay flat. And then I'll put the glue on the back of that piece of paper and I'll glue that down on top of my first layer. That's it. That is my collage done. Keep it simple. It looks good. You don't have to go over the top. One of my favourite quotes is "Simplicity is often the best." Page idea number 4 is using a kid's play pack. It is plain paper, 9 inches by 12 inches, and this happens to be a vintage pad. This was in my mum's stash, but look at the colours of this paper. It is perfect for junk journaling. The pages are all plain. When you don't want to do tea dyeing or coffee dyeing, or just say the weather isn't on your side, these types of pages are perfect. And if you're lucky enough to find one either in the back of the cupboard or when you go to the charity shop, make sure you grab it. Don't leave it there just because it says it's a kid's pad. I'm going to start with this green sheet first. I'm going to fold it as wide as my cover. So I'm going to grab my cover and from left to right, I'm just going to fold it so that it fits inside my cover. So just put a finger crease down the left-hand side. Then for this leftover bit, I'm going to use it as a flip out. I'm not going to waste any of this old paper, so I'm not going to cut it off. So just by folding it under there and creasing it with my finger, I know the back page is the same size as my front. Then I'm going to cut it off so that it's the right height to go inside my journal cover. Now I'm going to put it with this blue stripe paper and I've glued a fussy cut flower on it and it just looks perfect with it. The green and blue, the soft blue, it just goes with it so nicely. So pairing very plain paper with another simple paper looks so good. For this sheet, I'm going to make it a bottom pocket. I'm going to start by folding it in half and then I'm going to fold it up at the bottom so that it's the right height to fit in my journal. Then I'm going to open it up. Now I'm going to crease the bottom fold and put it back inside my journal so I can get the width of my page correct. I've marked the edge of my cover and I'm going to cut the width of my page inside that mark because I don't want my page to come outside the cover. So I'm going to cut this piece off now. So now I've got my pocket at the bottom. I'm just going to put a bit of glue on both ends and glue that down. Now when my page gets put in the journal, the center part of the pocket will get stitched in and I can embellish it however I like. This page here, I'm going to fold it long ways in the portrait position. So I'm just going to do a finger crease right down the center and then I'm going to fold it again in halves. And where I've folded that in on this half line here, I'm going to cut it off. And that's going to separate the two pieces and give me two very short, narrow pages. These types of pages are perfect for just slipping in between other larger pages. You can use these little pages for so much. Page number 5. Music sheet paper can be used in so many ways. I never coloured it with coffee dye. Instead, I just glued some napkin paper on the front. So all I did here was fussy cut out the flower off the napkin, put some Mod Podge on the music sheet, and then just glued the flower on top. If you use something with a white background, it just disappears into the music sheet. For the opposite side of the page, I'm going to use this cute little botanical notepad. So this page looks good. Depends on whether you like distress ink. Colour the edges. And I've also got a little stripper left over that I had out of the Daphne's Diary when I made my Daphne's Diary journal. This page is pretty easy. So just cut your pieces out, smaller than your page so there's a border around them, and just glue them down. This notepad piece I didn't have to cut at all. It just fit perfect. So now I've got it in my journal. I have a look and think, well, does it need any more? Am I happy with the way it looks? I put it with a couple of different pages just to see whether or not I want to add something to it. So what I can do is just add a little strip of note paper here. I'm just going to glue it to the top so it's like a little flip up and I can still see the name of the music sheet. Now for page number 6, this is a good way to use very narrow pages. I've added little pockets to them. This little book was given to me by my friend Deb. She went on a holiday before Christmas and she picked this book up from England. What I like to do with a book like this is I like to break the stitches and then pull the pages out gently. This way, I know I'm not going to tear them. I'm not going to tear any of the images and I'm going to be able to use the pages properly. I'm going to be able to fold them or cut them however I like. So for this one here, it's still got the spine on it. So I just put it down and I cut a very narrow slither off and that separates my page. Now because of the way these pages are, I'm able to fold them in half and it's giving me an image of the bird on both sides, but the inside is just text. So I've got these little paper pockets and I'm going to glue them so that they're hanging over the side. And really, I haven't tea-dyed them or anything. I've got these other pockets to do as well, so I'll show you both. So these craft ones already had some double-sided tape on them, but I'm going to add a bit of glue just to make sure they don't come off. So when you put a pocket in like this, make sure you put it away from the fold line where your spine is going to be. because when you put all your other pages in, you've got to give yourself some room for more pages. So I've just glued them down. I'm not making these pockets a pocket, so I'm gluing them right down at the back. So I add a little bit more glue, and now I'm going back over to the opposite side of the page, and I'm going to put a pocket there. So I've marked on the back of my pretty paper the size of my actual page, and now I've moved my ruler down and in, and I'm going to cut the back of that pretty paper out smaller. Now when I turn it around, this is what it's going to look like on my page. Now you can just glue this down and have a decorative mat on your page, or you can put a mark on it and punch a thumb hole in it. So now I'm going to glue my pocket in place. So you only need to glue on 3 sides, and then flip that over and glue it into place. Again, making sure the right hand side of the pocket here is away from the fold line on your page. Now I can come back later and embellish these pockets once I know where I'm going to put them in my journal. Now this is how this one looks when I glued the little white pockets in, and this is how it looks once I put a postcard in the big pocket and embellish the 2 little white pockets. So it doesn't really matter if you don't tea dye everything. You can leave things white. This is a great way to use a narrow page. Just glue something on it, glue your pocket sideways, whatever. You could put a little envelope on here. You could put a little glassine envelope on here. That would work as well. Page number 7. This is another great use of an otherwise plain sheet of 12 by 12 paper that's white on the back. We're also going to make use of a printable that I'll be putting in the link below for you. And we're going to use the basic journal cover to size our page. So we're folding it from left to right so that it fits inside the cover. And I'm just going to crease it with my fingers down the left side. And I'm cutting off the excess. I'm not making a flip out of this page. Then I put my page back on my cover, and I'm going to mark how high I want my page to be and cut it off. Black paper is perfect if you have a white gel pen. I'll show you what it looks like. I absolutely love using white gel on black paper. If you haven't got a book that's got some flowers in it to cut out, just go to my website and download this pink peony and just fussy cut it out. Pick a couple of washi tapes that you think will go with it. I've picked this one here, and I'm just tearing it at the top and the bottom, and I'm going to stick it on the edge of my page, and I'm putting a narrower one beside it, a little bit on and a little bit off it. Now I'm going to put some glue on the back of my flower, and then I just glue it in place over the top of the washi, and even if some of the leaves come off the side, and I just cut them off. That's it. That's that page done. This is how I like to create. I like my things looking simple. If you like it more busy, just keep adding stuff to it. But this is what it looks like, just simplified. You can have a piece of tracing paper or baking paper over the top, and you can see through it because these colours are lovely. So let's do the opposite side. We'll use a different washi paper this time. This time I'm going to use a wider washi and a narrow one, and I'm going to fussy cut a flower out of the book. So I've left a little border around the edge of the flower, and I put my wet glue on the back again, and I'm going to place it right on the edge of the washi so you can't see one side of the washi, and just gently put it in place. And that's the two sides. They're entirely different. One being a printable on the right and one being a fussy cut flower from a book. And they both look fantastic. Printables are a great substitute when you haven't got any books. This idea number 8, I'm going to use the negatives pocket as a page extension in my journal. So remember the old way we used to get our photos developed? They give you your photographs back in these little envelopes, and there's another little pocket where they hold the negatives. So I'm going to use this little pocket not as a pocket in my journal because it's too wide. I'm going to put it down the side and cover up this white space on my page, and it's going to extend the page just by a little bit. So I'm just going to open up the pocket and I'm just going to slide it onto my page. And once I get it where I want it, so you can see it's covering up the white space plus it's extending the page, I've just got to make sure that I glue it down where it's not extending too far. So I'm just going to use my Belly Art glue and I'll put a bit at the top here to hold it in place, and then I can check it and I finish gluing it. Now I'm going to take it out of where I've got it in the book so it's easier to handle, and I'm just going to finish gluing this pocket down. You could leave this side of it open if you wanted to use it as a pocket, but I just glued the whole thing down. And I'm just trimming up the height of the page so it's level with the pocket. I think it looks pretty good. What do you reckon? Like I said, you could easily turn it into a pocket as well if you didn't glue the whole thing down. And what else I did, while I was going through my box, I noticed in some of the envelopes there were extras like this. This is like a glassine envelope, but it's for reordering. And the same with these envelopes here. They supply you an envelope, so you put your roll of film in this envelope, take it back into the shop, and then they print out your photographs. So I'll be using these later on, don't you worry about that. Page idea number 9 is a layered tatty page. And I've made it one page, but it looks like 3 or 4 pages. I start with my A4 piece of paper and I fold it in half. So I've got my spine area, and then I'm going to tear away the top and the bottom to the size I want my biggest part of the page, because this is the base page. And I'm only going to layer one side of this base. So you can start off with scrap paper or full sheets of your coffee dyed paper, whatever you've got. I only had full sheets. So now I'm just tearing my layers and placing them down just to see what size I want them. They're going to be all different sizes. So I've got 3 layers that I'm going to lay on top of my actual page. And then I'm just going to curl over the edge of these torn pages randomly. And to make it look as tatty as you like, you can put little tears in them as well. Now I've done that, what I forgot to do was check how wide my base page needs to be. At the moment it's too wide, so I just tear it down again. It's no biggie. It's something I should have done first. And if the layers are still a bit too wide, you can tear them down to fit as well. I'm just using the vintage photo and I'm only putting the colour on the edge. You can bring the colour in as far as you like on this page. I'm just doing them right on the edge. So I've done all the layers all the way around. I'm going to use a glue stick. Even though I'm not a big fan of them, it works really well for this technique. All I want to do is get them pages held down on my base page. So I glue the back of each layer and then just put them in place. And this is it. This is all that I'm going to do to these pages for now, just to show you how you can make a page just that little bit different. You can add images on here, you could stamp on here, you could put a piece of vellum over the top sheet. There's so many ways you could embellish this page. So it really does depend on where you put it as to how you would embellish it. It looks really good on the black, but when I move it to here, it looks really good here, and I would just embellish that page so that it looked good to the page next to it. And you've got these little raggedy bits hanging out the side of your cover. Now here's a variation. Instead of using tea-dyed paper, just use book pages. I've done exactly the same. I've built my base, only this time, instead of gluing all my layers down, I put a rubber stamp on the edges first, and I grunge this one right up. So I put a lot of grunge into this one. So if this is the look you like, you could make it something like this. There are so many different looks. You could make a shabby chic look, you could make a grungy look, you could make the clean look like I did on the first one. You could use it as a topper on the front of your journal and just put a picture on the front here. You could stitch it down, you could add lace. I think it really looks beautiful. You could make it your own. I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy this page. Page 10, we're going to make a homemade stencil and stamp as a background. Doesn't it look beautiful? There are 2 steps to this page. The first step, we're going to make a cardboard stencil. This is about 200 to 250 GSM. So I'm just folding my A4 in half, and I'm just going to cut it down the center. So this is going to be my actual stencil. You can use a craft knife or a this is a Fiskars finger blade. So I'm going to use this. So I'm just randomly cutting down how wide I want my stripe, and then I'm cutting across the top and the bottom. I am taking no care to have straight lines, but I'm not overcutting. So when I stop right at the edge of the corner. And then just keep going. Just make your lines a little wiggly. Just deliberately make them look a bit rough, but I don't. They're going to be different heights, different widths, and not even measured the space in between. So here's my stencil finished. It's not a stencil that you're going to use for 3 years. I don't know how many times you'll get to use it, but they're so easy to make, just make another one. So now I'm just going to get a blank page. I'm going to do a white one and a coffee dyed one, just to show you that you can use this technique on white paper. So here's one I've done earlier, just to show you what it looks like in a green color. And you only need to do this light. So place your stencil down over your folded page, and this is Tattered Rose. It's a beautiful pinky brown, very light brown, and I'm using a makeup brush to do this because it just gets into these grooves much better. I've done a very light pass down my stripes because it's only meant to be my background. Now I'm going to put this beautiful rose stamp down the bottom in the corner. And doesn't it look so pretty? And to go even further, I'm putting another stamp across the top. You can put any border stamp that you've got or any decorative stamp across the top here. Now I can use this as a journaling page because the stripes in the background are subtle. This one here is antique linen on the white paper. I'm just going to find a place to put it in with the rest of the pages. It's going to go nearly anywhere I put in with these other pages. The white one, I always like to put like this, a white next to another white page. But this one turns out so pretty. Have a go at making your own stencils. They work really well. And here's the one I made using peeled paint. Page number 11 is printing directly onto a piece of tracing paper. Now tracing paper is very thin. It is too thin to just put through your printer on its own. To use tracing paper in your printer, you first need to attach it to a piece of copy paper, and I'll show you how to do it. This is the tracing paper I use today. It's an A4 size, so you would use whatever size you use for your printer normally. You can see how thin it is here. Your printer is just not going to like this very thin paper. But this is what it looks like after you've printed it. It's really a beautiful finish. You can see through it, so whatever page color you put it on, you'll be able to see it. And then all you got to do is fold it whichever way you like it. So this is portrait, and this one is the landscape. I've already attached it to the back of a white piece of copy paper. So what I do, you'll see here when I lift the tracing paper up, I've got some very narrow double-sided tape. It's 1/8 wide. And I just put 3 small pieces at the top. I take the top bit off and I stick down my tracing paper. I do this all the way around all 4 sides. And because your printer normally prints with a border, this is not going to be a problem when I go to take the tracing paper off the copy paper, because I just cut the border off and the little bit of tape that's holding down the tracing paper just gets removed with it. So it's very easy to take apart. You can see here that the sticky tape is still on the edge of the paper that I've just cut off. So now you can see that it's free. So I'll continue all the way around the whole page and cut off all the white bits. And this is going to release my tissue paper from the backing sheet. And just so you know, you can use deli paper as well. It'll give you a whole other colour, but it looks just as beautiful. Because I'm using A4 papers in my journal, this fits quite nicely. Sometimes you need to trim a bit off if it's too long, but that's the easiest part of this page. I'll put it in with my other pages and we'll have a look. And it's not sticking out. So I can use it like this, and it looks so nice on top of this coffee dyed paper. So this sheet here is a dictionary page. So I'm going to put this in a different location in my journal, and it sticks out. So I just trim off the edge in 2 in one go. Depending on where you put your pages in your journal, it'll tuck in further or it'll poke out further. So you just trim it off when it does that. If you can get some tracing paper, it looks fantastic as pages in your journal. Page number 12 is using packaging. I have a very generous friend by the name of Deb here in Australia. Every time we meet, we exchange gifts. She gave me this gift bag with Frida on it. And the cardboard, it's not thin, it's really good quality cardboard. I love it all. So I opened it up so it laid out in a flat piece. And now I've got it in the flat piece. See this strip down the left-hand side? I left that intact so I could deliberately use it as a flip page. So all I have to do is work out how high I want the flip and then cut it off at the top and down the side. Look, honestly, pretty much this is the flip page done. But on the back side of it, it's a little bit nasty. So I put it in here, and when I lay it down and lift it up, you'll see this fold over piece is going to be my hinge. So I grab my pencil and I mark it where I need to glue this back in place. I'm going to cover it with some tea-dyed paper. So I'm just gluing down the pieces. This one here on the hinge, I'm leaving it a little bit longer so it just looks intentional when I attach it to the page. So I'm using Belly Art glue, and I'm only putting it on the back side of the hinge. I line it up with where I got my pencil marks and I just glue it down. And this makes a beautiful flip page. So if you've got some packaging, keep the hinge on it and use it for a flip page. And it looks really nice here on both from the front and the back now. So you can use packaging and make yourself an adorable flip page. Congratulations, you've made it this far. Now it's your turn to create these 12 pages. Feel free to explore my video list. There's plenty of inspiration waiting for you.